This afternoon, we have with us Katie Nixon, who will be speaking about different aspects of marketing and messaging for urban farmers. Katie co-operates Green Gate Family Farm with her husband, which is a certified organic diversified market farm where they produce vegetables, fruits, bedding plants, eggs, and flowers. Katie is a founding member and current president of the KC Food Hub, a farmer-owned and farmer-run cooperative serving the wholesale market for West Central and for West Central Missouri Community Action Agency. Katie serves as the food systems director. In this role, she's brought in more than $2 million in USDA and other funding to improve the regional food system. So Katie does a lot of wonderful work in our region, and I am really delighted to be able to introduce her to you. We can take questions in the Q&A as the presentation advances, and we'll try to get to some of those at the end. So thank you, Ken, for joining us, and I will stop sharing so you can take it away, Katie.
Thanks, Ryan. So thanks for having me. I am not an urban farmer, but I used to work in urban farming quite a bit for Extension, and I know a lot about what urban farmers have to go through sometimes that might be different from rural farming. But regardless, a lot of this message is for any kind of farmer. So thank you for having me. I am on my farm right now, about 2 hours south of Kansas City, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that throughout the presentation. I just wanted to share a little bit about the nonprofit that I work for. It's actually, I sort of straddle two nonprofits that are sisters together, and we run the food system program out of both of them. It's a community action agency that works, basically was started as part of the war on poverty, but we do some food security stuff. We offer farm to food pantry, farm to school. We work on food value chain development as well, which is some of our biggest work that we do currently. And that definitely straddles more on the new growth side of things. We also have a big event that we do called Farm to Fork, and that just finished in March. Really great attendance down there in Nevada, Missouri, with some good demonstrations on soil health and things like that. So the Kansas City Food Hub is also a big part of my life. It was co-founded by both Kansas and Missouri farmers. There were 5 of us. And now we are a 25 member strong cooperative now, which represents about 35 farmers, because some farm members join as a collective. So for example, New Roots for Refugees is joined as a member, so is Cultivate Kansas City. And sometimes they have other farmers that there's several farmers that they might work with in one place. We also have a couple Amish growers who join together, and they represent 5 to 10 farmers for each member. It was created in 2015. It really is a farmer-owned and farmer-run operation. It focuses on the wholesale market. We have both retail and wholesale sales, but all the farmers sell as if it were a more wholesale market. And we used to operate in sub-hub regions, so we would have like on-farm cold storage that we would utilize from our farmer members, and then we would aggregate it and bring it into the city. We sort of outgrew that model a little bit. We may go back to it someday when we can figure out the logistics a little better, but right now we have a main warehouse in Overland Park. It's just a small 800 square foot cold storage unit where farmers deliver product, and we take the product out of that building and then deliver it out to our customers, 45 of which are schools. And we've been working really hard to build up that market for schools. A little bit more about that market too. And my farm, which is always at the underlying, work, and always constant, especially right now. I'm looking out the window at a garden that needs lots of weeding at the moment. But Green Gate Family Farm is here in Wheatland. Like I mentioned, we're 2 hours south of Kansas City, but our main market is Kansas City. You can see we are quite rural. This is a satellite image of our farm here, but we really operate, all of our real energy is right around here. And this is an old satellite image. I don't know how you get an updated Google satellite image. So if anybody knows how to do that, send me a message in the chat. But we now have 3 high tunnels. This is one here, and we have 3 high tunnels that we work out of, and it doesn't even have our greenhouse in here, which we've had for almost 7 years now. But you can see the 2 high tunnels in this other picture. We basically farm on about an acre of annual produce, and then everything else is, there's an orchard, and we have room for livestock and things like that. And we've been certified organic since 2013. So I come at this perspective from both a nonprofit, grassroots organizing perspective, as well as a business owner who is trying to make it work. And I'll tell you what, it's hard, but we hang in there. So most of what I share in this presentation, like I said, is applicable across rural, both across urban to rural farms. So we're talking about suburban and peri-urban and things like that as well. But this is specific. This slide specifically to sort of address the urban aspect. And urban farmers have an opportunity to share a different kind of message. It's obviously you're very close to your market. As long as you're not going to another city to market, you can find quite a good market within an urban setting. And, that hyper local message really gets at the heart of people who really care about their food miles or their ecological footprint. And you can really hype that up. You can be more connected to buyers. We do cut flowers, but I can't do cut flowers very well because I don't really have good access to my buyers, and they like to have a little more direct communication and more deliveries. We only do once a week delivery into Kansas City. So there are urban farmers who have kind of outmaneuvered me in the marketplace, and I don't really do that many cut flowers to florists anymore because there are other farmers that can service those buyers better. Also, can feel a little isolating in rural areas. So the urban farming community can help you get through the tough times, and there will be a lot of them. And then there's support networks that you're real close to, like, organizations like Cultivate Kansas City and different farms doing different projects that, can just be connected with, like the Young Farmers Coalition and things like that. Some of the cons are pretty obvious. You're limited in space, and there's contamination threats, there's threat of development, theft and vandalism is an issue, and then there's infrastructure constraints. But in terms of marketing and messaging, you really have a one-up on some of those rural farmers, except for maybe like the amount of production that's possible on an urban farm if you don't have very much space. But you can grow quite a lot of food on an acre. So just some takeaways here, or just one takeaway is urban ag has the advantage of inviting the customers to experience farming in a little more intimate way. You can invite those buyers onto your farm pretty easily. It's not a 2-hour drive. They can just, hop on over, and you can play to that strength and put that into your messaging. But you are going to be constrained in what you're able to produce. So moving into markets here, regardless of what market you decide to go into, and I'm going to talk more about those specifically focused on wholesale and restaurants, you really need to have an online presence, which is fairly obvious, but not always obvious, I guess. Being in a rural area, I realized how little sometimes people understand like the fundamentals of like a business. I hear about a business and I may see it like on the side of a truck, and then when I go to look it up, on the internet, I can't find them because they don't have a website, or they maybe just have a Facebook page that's kind of sketchy, and it doesn't make me want to contact them very much. So you make sure you get, at least some type of online presence, even if it's just one page that says, this is my farm, and make it easy to contact you. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a web page and I'm like, where are these people? And like, how do I get a hold of them? On our webpage, we have as their footer on every single page, we have our address, our phone number, and our email address. Now, you might not want to call. I get random calls. We sell to Whole Foods, and on our we sell bedding plants, and on the plant tag is my cell phone number and Ken's cell phone number, and my name is next to it. And I will get calls, people standing in the Whole Foods lot outside the store asking me questions about which tomato should I buy. So it does take up time to answer those calls, but also it helps your customer feel connected to you. And so make it easy for them to find you. Facebook, you don't have to have a Facebook page, but like Instagram's a good one because it's mostly focused on pictures and less on politics. and that's not always true, but there are other ways to sort of connect. We've never had a Twitter account. I don't know what you would do on there if I had one. But and also a good thing to know too is the Google business account. When someone Googles your name, Google, you always see that thing like off to the side that has your business information. Well, you can control what that looks like, and it's really important. Like once you have your business name, so you can control what pictures are shown there, what number is there, if there's office hours or if there's hours for your business. Definitely grab that and own that, because otherwise Google's going to put up information that might not be true, not intentionally, but they'll just glean it off the internet and pop it up there. And then finally, nowadays, if you don't have an online store, it's not the end of the world, but it is a good way to start selling. That's how we got out of doing farmers market, is by opening an online store so that people could have access to our products. There's a lot to say about retail. I'm not going to go into retail sales so much today, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. This picture over here is our online store in Barn to Door, and we did about $20,000 in that online platform last year. You can definitely do more if you push that a little more, but we didn't. That was just part of our business model. I'll talk about that later too. So when we talk about wholesale and restaurant sales, restaurants are really lumped into the wholesale, like if you talk about like retail or wholesale. But I feel like restaurants are also kind of just like another customer, like a retail customer, because a lot of times they're not huge accounts, depending on what restaurant you're working with or what chef you're working with. That's the general statement. It's not always true, but I'll go through wholesale, what's happening with wholesale over here first, and then we'll talk about restaurants. But when I say wholesale, it can sound kind of intimidating, like you think, oh, the U.S. food truck or the Cisco truck full of food, right? That's like low-end wholesale. I know farmers who sell semi-load truckfuls of cucumbers to Iowa, and they load up that semi, it goes to Iowa, and they never see it again, and they get a very low price for those cucumbers, but they move a lot of them. That is low-end wholesale. When I talk about high-end wholesale, I'm talking about some of those smaller but large accounts. So probably like larger restaurants, schools, potentially smaller grocery stores, like mom and pop grocery stores, places like that you typically see higher prices at the retail. When you're if you're at a small grocery store, they typically have a little bit higher prices, but that's probably because they're also paying a little more, because they don't get the volume discounts that other places do. And if you're selling through a wholesale market, especially grocery stores are probably one of the more challenging wholesale markets to go into, to be honest, because you need your most perfect product out front. People shop with their eyes. Unfortunately, in this country, we've really hyper graded everything. So for every pepper you see on the shelf, there's probably at least one, possibly two other peppers that never made it to the shelf because they got graded out and sent to a different market. And so it can be challenging sometimes to send your best product for the lowest price forward. But you kind of find a balance there, and you have to be okay with, if you're going to focus just on wholesale, you have to be okay with a lot of food waste. And certifications and insurance, there are some requirements in wholesale settings that you might not find in a retail setting or even for restaurants. So you have to be careful. That might even preclude you from that market. For example, the KC Food Hub only has a couple of good food safety certified farms, good agriculture GAP certified farms. And so when we've talked to buyers that have to have that GAP certification, well, they could only buy from those couple of farmers, which is not the end of the world. We can work with those farmers, but it means that the rest of the farmers wouldn't have access to that market. So, and also grading, like I said, is more of an issue. So you have to really focus on what is the industry standard, what kinds of things need to make it into the box, what kinds of things can I not put in the box in terms of like produce sizing and all of that. And that's a whole other world, which I'm not going to go into because I don't feel like most urban farmers or even small small farmers, I just don't feel like small farmers are ever going to be in a big wholesale game like some of our bigger growers. So we can focus on other markets like restaurants. I have sold to a lot of different restaurants over the years, and they can be kind of frustrating. It can be a frustrating market, especially because they're so relationship based. It's almost like you kind of have to be buddies with, the person who's ordering sometimes. I mean, they want to work fast too, but if you can develop a strong relationship with a chef and they, get to know kind of what they like, and they tell you kind of what they like, they can order a decent amount. A $200 order on a week is pretty good. A $50 order, not so great, because you're delivering it usually. I did have farmers or restaurant chefs that would come to my market and buy from me there and pay retail price. Those were really good customers, but and they would buy a lot. But they're not very. That restaurant went out of business, not surprisingly. So you have to be careful a little bit if you're putting a lot of your eggs in one basket and that chef leaves, and what happens then? We had a great customer at the Kansas City Food Hub. They were buying like $2,000 worth of food a week, and the chef left, and they never ordered again. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. The other thing about pricing for restaurants is generally you can get like 75% of retail, depending on what it is. For figs, we charge retail price. For duck eggs, we charge retail price no matter who the customer is, because we have so few of them and the demand is really high. But tomatoes, you might be dipping down. Like we have one restaurant we negotiate with, so we say, well, let's try to get you a minimum of 40 pounds of heirloom tomatoes a week, and you can get this price if you're at that level. Whereas some of my smaller customers, they only want 10 pounds. I'm not going to give them a price break. And it can make things interesting. Like I've asked my chefs, like, is there something you would like us to grow? And, they told me, and sometimes it's a failure and sometimes it's not. But, on my part, like, oh, I've never grown that before. Let's give it a try. Turns out that I'm not that good at it. So I kind of leave that one alone. But I should probably cruising here through these slides. But the buyers, when you're finding buyers, especially with restaurants, you can look at menus and be like, okay, they have kale on their menu. That might be something that I could provide. They have tomatoes. Tomatoes are, by the way, probably your biggest seller. It's hard to run a farm without tomatoes. I'll tell you that. We sell about $10,000 to $15,000 worth of tomatoes a year. And so it's by far our biggest vegetable seller. But if you're doing meat or protein, you got to find, like, are they serving chicken? Like, can I hit their price point? Is there like ground beef on the menu? Something like that. Stop in and talk to them, but kind of have a pitch and like an ask. Don't just be like, I think I'm going to grow food. And like, they'll be like, okay, I don't know where to go from there. Develop kind of like what you're hoping to get out of the meeting before you actually go in there, because people are busy. They're also running their own businesses a lot of times, and definitely don't stop in at lunch or breakfast. Try to go in a non-busy time, which would probably be like around 2 or 3 o'clock. Hopefully they haven't gone like left yet or whatever. Even 1:30 is probably better than like 11 or something like that. So yeah, developing that product list, that can be challenging. The supply demand thing's hard, because even when you go to somebody and say, hey, I am going to grow some food, and they're like, well, what are you going to grow? And it's like, well, what do you want? And sort of this back and forth of like, I'm not really sure what to do. But I think, definitely trying to hone in on some of those staples that you think you might be able to sell to those markets, and starting from there. So keeping buyers is can be challenging if you don't have good communication, and one misunderstanding, one miscommunication could end the relationship on either side. I've had farmers that got mad at a chef and they never talked to him again. I've got chefs that met farmers and they never talked to him again. So, and it's just over something where it's like, oh, they said they were going to do this and they didn't. And don't disappear on them. Don't ghost your buyers. Just say, hey, we're going to be out of town for 2 weeks. We'll get back to you. If you're on a normal communication chain, just keep that normal communication chain up and try to do similar timing on when you're communicating with them and all of that. People need to be in a schedule, especially when it comes to buying. And if you make it challenging, they're not going to work with you. They have 5 other buyers they're working with probably. And some of these restaurants are working with 10 farmers. They don't have time to mess with you. So you need to make it easy for them. And that's why the Kansas City Food Hub is becoming very popular with restaurants, because they can get access to 25 farmers, but have one invoice, one ordering period, and one delivery and one payment. And so it makes their life a lot easier. And then for the farmer, it's the same thing. You get one pick list, you have one delivery point, and you're done, and you get one payment. So it can be better, good for both sides. And then the other thing I would just say about some of these wholesale buyers is like, maybe you aren't going to get great orders every week, but if you had like one staple thing that that like you've agreed upon, like you want this every week, like say you got ground beef on the menu and they're going to want 10 pounds of ground beef every week. Or for us, one of our restaurants buys 8 dozen eggs every single week. And so I know that that's the base order, and anything they order on top of that is great. But at least I know that I have that going on. Just a quick point you to this resource. We worked with K-State on this one too, to demystifying wholesale market. It's very confusing, the wholesale market, honestly. One of the things that I wanted to do through my nonprofit work was sort of demystify that market and try to help growers understand what it meant to grow into that, to sell into that market. And so we have a nice long form video from buyers, and then we have shorter form videos from growers who are selling into the market. They're growers from this area, from Kansas and Missouri, talking about what products they're selling and how it's going for them. It's an overview. It's not an in-depth, obviously, for 15 minutes, but there's some great clips in there from different farmers. So about messaging, in a retail setting, or you can talk to your customer, you can tell your story, you can be there with them. In a wholesale setting, your product is your story, and your messaging is your story. So, coming up with a brand and developing that brand is important. There was 120, we found in our feasibility study in 2015 for the Food Hub, we found $125 million in local food demand in the Kansas City region. Well, okay, so you're a small farmer. You are probably looking for, this tiny sliver of that demand. So you want to sort of hone in and try to figure out, like, what is your ideal customer and what is that customer attracted to? And then what are your farming philosophies and how do they intersect? So you do not get paid enough as a farmer to not enjoy your job. And so whatever you can do to make it so that your life is more enjoyable, please do it. If you drag your feet every season and hate more than half of what you do in farming, you're not going to make it very long. But if you can build your business around being whole and healthy and mentally sane, that is really, really important. And so this goes along with your market. If your market drives you nuts every time you go there, I mean, that's why we left the farmers market. It was emotionally and physically draining, and we could not sustain that particular market. So we had to decide, okay, so what other markets are we going to try to tap into, and how are we going to make our business work based on that? And where do we find our customers? So we kind of reinvented ourselves a little bit, and really tried to get that message out. And so we did that through advertising. You can see people want to see you. They want to hear your story. They want to see your animals. They want to connect with your farm. You have to be able to do that through different channels, and we do it through social media. We do it through a newsletter. We do it through just talking to our customers when we see them, even our wholesale customers. We kind of throw things in here and there. So yeah, and you also keep to a schedule when you're advertising is good, because people kind of know when to expect. We do a quarterly newsletter, and we try to do it every season. There's a lot of farms that are much better at newsletters, and they'll do it every week or every month, and they'll keep to a kind of a schedule there, to expect that newsletter. And you can also, in your advertising, if you're going to be specifically targeting customers, provide them with an action step like shop here or buy now, or something that gives them something to do with that information, or check out our website or something like that. When we're doing social media posts, I don't necessarily do that very often. I'd say 1 in 10 social media posts, I'm like, hey, come and buy something, or, come and do something. The rest is just kind of to help them connect with the farm. But if I'm putting out a newsletter, there are many action steps. And so probably a quarterly thing is a little too little, because I put way too much in the newsletter and they probably don't read half of it. But whereas if I spread it out, I could, do a 1 ask every newsletter rather than 5 asks every newsletter. There's some great tools out there for you for free. There's MailChimp Constant Contact. Those are free mailing services. They are a little tricky and can be very frustrating, but for the most part, they're pretty handy. Google Forms, we use that a lot for collecting information from our customers. For our CSA, we use it. And then Canva is a nice design tool. I used Canva to design this flavor poster, but they have some really good free tools there. There's probably others, but just point those out. And then, you know, you're running a business, you're a person, you have feelings, you have beliefs, you have stances. I totally understand that. But you really are a business that wants to maybe you know, not alienate customers, and that's fine. Like if you have customers that you don't really care about and you say something that's going to alienate all of them, well then that's fine, whatever, that's your choice. But if you want to just sort of stay neutral, avoid politics and hot button issues, and don't comment as your business. I've seen like Facebook posts where like a business is commenting on something very personal and political, and I just don't think that's a very good idea. Okay, a lot going on here, but I have just maybe, I don't know, 10 more slides here, but so logistics, taking orders and organizing orders. This is where I spend a lot of time on the computer. So for our farm, I get orders via text. I get orders via email. I get orders on Local Food Marketplace, which is what the Kansas City Food Hub uses as their online platform. I have my orders on our online platform, which is Barn to Door, and I use Google Forms, which is where our CSA customers make their weekly choices. We offer choices for our CSA. So I have to collate all of these 5 things where all these orders were placed, and I have to put them somewhere so that I can organize the harvest. It's a little clunky. I tried to get my chefs to use my online system because Barn to Door has a wholesale, like you can do retail or wholesale on Barn to Door, and they just did not want another account, and I could not get them on there. So I just went back to texting with them. Interestingly enough, Whole Foods is the one I email with. They do have quite a lot of complicated, we sell to Whole Foods for our bedding plants. I think I mentioned that, but you know, we just did the delivery this morning, and they, you know, they placed a $3,000 order, and it was all via email and spreadsheets. So, you know, I have to organize that for those orders. And occasionally I'll get a customer that'll email me or text me. And there's just that one customer that won't get online, and I probably should tell them that they need to place their order online, but I don't. And so I just organize it and do it that way. And so I take all these things and I put them into spreadsheets. I use Excel, which has some great functionality. QuickBooks is not my friend. I don't really, we bought QuickBooks a long time ago for invoicing, and then it like went out of date about 5 years ago, but it still works to make an invoice, so we still use it. But it just because it's easy and quick, and I already have all my customers in there. But I don't use QuickBooks for anything else. And the spreadsheets are really handy because you can generate formulas pretty easily and organize quantities of harvest and you know, organize things into nice clean rows and things like that. And I'm sure there's free online software that's similar to Excel, like Google Sheets and stuff, but I haven't found it as friendly as Excel. But yeah, I use, and I can show, if we have time, I can show you what some of these spreadsheets look like. Just a note on online sales platform, like I mentioned, you can use Barn to Door for wholesale. You can set 2 different prices, and you can set a customer as a wholesale customer or as a retail customer, and depending on where they're set, they can go look at the different items that are available. But it never caught on for my chefs, so I just left it because I had to then manage 2 different sides of the store, and so now I just focus on the retail side. I don't know about wholesale for the rest of these except for Local Food Marketplace, which is not listed on here, but we use that for the Food Hub, and it really is designed for multiple farmers to use it and multiple buyers to use it, and then one online interface. So if you're ever doing like a farm collective or something and you guys want to sell together, it's a good tool to use because I can list what I have, a farmer over there can list what they have, and then so on and so forth, and then it all is listed on the same page and it's on the same ordering system. with the same delivery. But this is a resource, the Fair Share CSA Coalition, which we're also a member of, basically analyzed all these, like rated them. So you can go check out their resources on their webpage. And just a word about diversifying your market. So our farm does not rely on one market. It's about 50-50 retail, wholesale. Our CSA makes up a nice chunk there. Well, at least this was last year's numbers. Actually, I think this was 2021 numbers, not 2022 numbers, but they're close anyways. So 34% of our retail sales are CSA, 19% is online. Our other wholesale are restaurants, the Food Hub, and then Whole Foods is a large chunk of our wholesale sales. They are hard to work with in some senses as a corporate structure, but the actual physical stores that we work with just individuals who are making orders and deciding what they're going to have for each store, rather than like some big order that's going to go out to 10 different stores and we never have contact with those stores. So it's a different kind of, I know there's other farmers that work with Whole Foods and they all have different experiences, it seems like. So ours is fairly decent with Whole Foods. So, and then, yeah, the Food Hub, actually that percentage has probably gone up as the Food Hub sort of gets its feet and is selling to more buyers. We are now doing more lettuce in the off season, which brings me to product selection. You know, for a wholesale market, if you're really going to focus on that wholesale quantity, you know, I wouldn't pick everything that you grow to be wholesale. I would pick 2 to 5 things that you like to grow and that you're good at growing and that you can grow enough of for a wholesale market. Like for us, it's cherry tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, lettuce, and sometimes beets when I get a good crop. I'm good at growing those things for the most part, and so I scale that up. Like this winter, or just last week, we harvested 2 weeks ago, we harvested like 100 pounds of lettuce for the schools. And that grew over the winter time. So we're looking at our markets and seeing where our niche is. And yeah, and so, you know, ask the buyers what they might want in terms of like quantities, and you can sort of plan your production out from there in terms of what, you know, items you might be focused on for wholesale. And then you could also work with other farmers, like I mentioned before, with the online sort of organizing multiple farmers through one sales avenue. I know there's the Rolling Prairie CSA, and they organize many farmers to basically serve a very large CSA, so that one farmer's not on the hook to grow all that food. They're working together, and I think you could do that pretty easily in an urban setting. You know, if there's other farmers that you want to work with. Obviously, farmers are independent-minded people, and so sometimes it can be hard to, you know, get them all organized around one idea, which is why farmers markets probably work pretty well for urban farmers too, because they can just kind of, they have a lot more closer access to that. For us, we were driving 2 hours, you know, waking up at 3 a.m. and all that, so it wasn't very fun. And then, of course, the Food Hub is an opportunity for farmers to work together to sell. And as I mentioned, we went from maybe like we had like 6 schools in 2019, and now we have 45. And they want a minimum, all those schools, the demand from them is like between 600 and 800 pounds of lettuce a week. They all have salad bars, and, you know, they start in August and they end in May. So that's a pretty good salad season. And so we have like, I don't know, I think there's like 10 farmers all growing lettuce now for the schools and selling through the Food Hub. Okay, just a couple more slides here. Just a note on certification. You know, you don't have that eye-to-eye connection with your buyer, with the end user, especially if you're selling through a grocery store like we do with Whole Foods, or even if you're, you know, those schools are feeding those kiddos. We have actual like little placard cards that show each farmer and talks about and says the name of their farm. I have any up here, but and the schools love them. They put them up on the wall, you know, and they get to, like, the kids get to point to the farmers or whatever. And every story I've seen, that because the media has covered some of our farm to school sales, And, they always show that wall with the farmers on it. So creating materials that your end user can see is great. And so that's where some of these certifications can happen. And there's two different real kinds of certifications I'm talking about here. One is like the verified, like certified organic or naturally grown or 100% grass fed. That's a farming practice certification that helps tell your story about how you farm. And then there's food safety certification, which is a whole other ball game, and that's more about compliance with the buyer. Customer doesn't really know what that means. They don't really care. They want their food to be safe, but they don't necessarily know, like, oh, if it's food safety certified, is it safer? Like, what does that mean? I think, like you can see on our label here, we are both USDA certified, and then the Real Organic Project was started basically as a result of hydroponics being allowed in certified organic production. So they verify soil-based farmers, and so they verify soil-based organic farmers, certified organic farmers, and we choose to stay certified organic. We're very small. But because we can use that seal, that USDA seal that customers recognize and associate with better health, better environment, and just small farming in general, even though it's been corrupted a little bit. But we could talk about that for a while, but I'm not going to. Just a few more considerations here. Packaging is pretty important in wholesale markets. You have to deliver 10 pounds of lettuce somehow. And you can't, it's got to look clean and it's got to be clean. You can reuse boxes, but once they get to a certain point, you really don't want to do that because it can be quite off-putting. And also for standard packing, like especially for the food hub when they deliver, like it's really hard if there's a lots of different sized boxes, which there are in the industry. I'm sure you've seen them. Wax boxes can be very expensive, $3 to $5 for one box, and you're putting in $10 worth of produce. Well, that can be a little bit challenging for you on the wallet side of things. But it is important to use good, sturdy boxes that are not going to fall apart by the time it gets to the customer. It's really important to label and make sure that your contact information is on there. Make sure you put the date in which it was packed. If you've got certifications, obviously you can stick those on the labels, but it presents with a much nicer product if you can have it nicely packed and nicely labeled. And like I said, the certification and insurance is another thing where it's not super expensive to add on, $1 million in liability, and you should definitely have that as a business, as some will require you to have that. And then how will you deliver your product? We have a 1993 Ford Econoline van with 350,000 miles on it. I hold my breath every time we deliver. We are in the market for a new van. We really need to switch that out. But it's just a matter of finances, right? You have to just pick your battles. And so the truck is running. We spend about $3,000 on it every year to keep it on the road. But with one of these times, it's just not going to be fixable. So we really need to do something about that. So how are you going to deliver your product? Are you going to deliver it on a bicycle? I have a farmer friend in Washington. He delivers all of his stuff on a bicycle, and his buyers love it, and they stick with him because they know he's into it. So for an urban farmer, you might be able to do something like that. And then food safety, oh God, it's a whole other thing that can be kind of intimidating. We are not food safety certified on our farm. We do follow the FSMA, Food Safety Modernization Act rules, and have been visited, not inspected, but visited by the Department of Ag, Missouri Department of Ag is the one that runs the FSMA program here in the state of Missouri. But we definitely need to make sure our food is safe. And that means like not processing out in the open air where a bird might be able to poop on my product, or where a cat could jump up and like lay on my salad greens or something like that. So you just have to make sure you're prepared to clean and wash in potable water as well. And you don't have to sanitize your greens. People ask me that. It's not a requirement, but I'm sure Eleni has a lot to say about shelf stable and also food safety around greens, but so I'm not going to even touch on that, but I'll probably say something, put my foot in my mouth. So, and then, again, I'm going to tell you this again, because farming is hard and you can get burnout really easily. You have to do something that you like. So picking products that you like to grow and you like to clean and you like to pack, you don't have to love it, but you can't hate it, because if you hate it, you're not going to be in the game very long. And, you can make a plan. Great, make a plan. Try to figure out, like, okay, we're going to shoot for this, and I think we could do this. But be prepared to throw that plan out the window, because weather and your physical availability, your time, everything just gets thrown at you. Sometimes your buyers change their minds. You have to be able to adapt that plan, or even just throw it out the window. But at least you've thought about it. You've tried to do some calculations on how much you might be able to harvest per foot, for your lettuce beds, and how much you hope to, sell it for. So if you've been prepared, you can be prepared better for those unforeseen circumstances. Just a few resources here. You can, through our program, we do offer technical assistance, and we also have a mentor program that we run to match beginning farmers or new farmers in new ventures with the experienced growers. The growinggrowers.org webpage has some great resources too. Like, they have the Demystifying Wholesale Manual that goes along with the video series I showed earlier. Barn to Door also has some good resources. I'm not sure how much access you get as a non-paying customer, but they do have some marketing resources for sure. And then there's another one on beginningfarmers.org. And then for legal support, Farm Commons is a great organization that can help you. They have sample contracts, they've got sample employee handbooks, they've got all kinds of different things from a legal standpoint that you don't necessarily find anywhere else. Okay, I stop. Ooh, I made it 44 minutes. It was 40 because we started a little late, but
Thank you so much,
I don't know
Kate.
if everybody's late after lunch, sleeping, but it's so weird not to see anybody's face. I feel like I'm talking to myself in a room all by myself.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I don't see any questions in the question and answer box yet, but if folks want to pose some questions, that box should be down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, I believe.
Can they unmute and ask questions?
We can see if we can do that.
Or you could say allow to talk. So could they raise their hand or something? I don't know.
Yeah, if you raise your hand on the, let's see, that it's under the reactions button, I believe. Little smiley face with the plus sign down at the bottom of your Zoom window.
So the participants can't talk. Maybe. Anyways. Okay. Well. I can show you a few spreadsheets if you want.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, good. Oh, there's a question about databases we use for pricing. Yeah, just being at the farmer's market for 9 years, we kind of understood what the organic retail price we could get away with was. And when I say we can get away with, because we always charged high-end organic prices. I'm not messing around with trying to undercut anybody. So, and also I always look at the grocery store, what is the organic price? Just today or just the other day, I was like, oh, beets are up to $4. They're starting to match mine. I better raise my price. I think we work way too hard to undercut ourselves. So be confident in your price is what I would say. There are some, if you typed in farmers market pricing, I think there's some resources there if anybody knows of other ones. about database pricing for, where you can find pricing in the different databases. But again, like if you look at a grocery store's price, typically they're marking it up 100%. So like that grocery store, if it's a dollar for green onions, they probably paid 50 cents for that green onion to the farm, to the distributor. The distributor paid the farmer 30 cents or less, would be my guess. So in some wholesale markets, it's a real, like, you're getting really low prices. So we're trying to create new markets that, you're not stuck in that kind of terrible cycle. If you ever pay attention to Missouri Farmers or the National Farmers Union, they have an average price per that the farmer gets per dollar, and it's gone down every single year, basically. It's like at 15 cents for every dollar that a farmer makes on a product you buy at the store. And then there's another question about how I organize pickups when folks order from our online marketplace. Okay, well, yeah, so because we're out, far away from our main market in Kansas City, we offer pickup site points. We used to, when we left the market, we were like, okay, well, we'll offer a delivery service, door-to-door delivery. And I quickly got disillusioned with that and said, I am not doing that. I don't want to drive all over the city in this giant van for 2 hours on a Saturday. So now we just offer, like, if you really want our food, you have to come pick it up and we actually are just in Brookside, which is where our farmers market was. We distribute out of my brother's driveway for an hour and a half, and then we go over to another site at 31st and Broadway and do a distribution there. And then I have a very select few customers that are very good customers that we deliver to their door because they're on our delivery route. And so when you go to Barn to Door, you can find the different pickup spots, and there's a pickup on the farm on Fridays for locals. But to tell you the truth, I don't have that many local customers. So. And have I had any success with selling bundle kits like salad kits or salsa kits to increase profits? We've done that with plants, like, tomato, jalapeno, kind of basil plant sale or whatever. And I have seen them work. I've seen other farmers do it. I don't have the bandwidth to add that particular thing into the mix because it just takes that much more effort for me to like figure out, well, what's that going to look like? And then I have to put them together. And but it's a good idea. I mean, I think bundling is always a good idea. And that's we do sell like a harvest box, which is just like whatever, if a customer doesn't want to have to make a choice, they could just get $20 worth of produce, and it's kind of a deal. So that's kind of how we do that. And I don't know that it increases I don't know that it would increase my profits, because it actually increases my labor to do it that way, to do a bundle. And I can't answer Peggy Williams' question, but I'm pretty sure this presentation will be available. Oh, you want the slide presentation only, maybe?
Yeah, there'll be a recording of this published. We can work on the slide thing maybe.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it. It's probably a little big because it's got a lot of pictures, but we could probably flatten it out or something. Okay, I was going to show you some spreadsheets. Right. I got to share my screen. Here is one of my spreadsheets. So this one is we have a winter CSA, it just finished. But basically my sheet one is my CSA and what they're going to get that week. And then they get to make choices. I think that's in the way. They get to make choices in their CSA, and I mark that down here. And then I have a harvest list for my CSA, which is over here. This is the online list that I got off the Barn to Door, and I'm basically collating all those 5 things I showed you. I'm collating them into one place for my pick sheet for the harvest. And then I actually take this pick sheet and I flatten it out a little more, and I combine all of the things together in one line and basically come up with how many pounds of each thing I might need to get. And I know how many pounds will fit into like a tote. For example, lettuce. I need 27 pounds of lettuce. Okay, that is 5 pounds. I can harvest 5 unprocessed pounds, or what will be what will be 5 pounds of lettuce in a tote, and so I need 6 totes of lettuce when we go out to the high tunnel. And this goes up on the board for my staff to see. And I do have 2 employees. They work about hours a week, sometimes more and more right now, 6 to 8 hours a week. So I get an extra 16 hours of help to do this a week. And then my husband does all the animal stuff. So we sell eggs too, except for I clean the eggs. I can't pass that one off. And then this is our pack sheet, and this is everybody's order. So, it wasn't a ton of orders in March. I didn't have a ton of stuff, but, and then these are the restaurant sales and the food hub, my pack list for the food hub and what I need to put on my label and stuff. So that's that. And then just one thing about the plan that I talked about. This was my plan, I think last year, and we had, I don't know, things just changed, and this plan was only slightly followed. But I basically projected out how much I wanted to produce each week for the wholesale market, and then from there I can extrapolate what that means per bed space and put it into my planting plan. And I can sort of estimate, well, if I sell all of that and it's $36 a case, then I'm going to make $648 on that product for the year, and so on and so forth. And these prices are based off of my experience in farming, and also I know what other growers are pricing their product at as well. It's not a perfect system, and it's good to know what other farmers are charging. But also you can go to, let's stop sharing my screen here. You can go to the AMS or is it the AMS website? I used to go there to see what the terminal market pricing was, but I haven't been there in a while. But the USDA they list every single day what the terminal market price was in Detroit for a case of broccoli. So you can kind of look there too. They also have the retail price point for grocery stores, so you can find what the average price of an onion was across the country. Also, the Packer newspaper is a free newspaper. It's got great information in it, and it's an industry paper that talks a lot about pricing and what's being harvested around the world and what the produce industry looks like. So it's quite interesting. They talk about customer behaviors too, which is also really interesting. One of the last flyers they had that sent out with the newspaper was about their sustainability summit, and they were talking about how food as medicine is really going to be a strong sort of message this year. And so as a small grower, I can really piggyback onto that message, because if the national companies are going to be pounding that message into the customers, I want a piece of that advertising, because I don't have to pay for it. They've already spent all the money on it, and I'm going to piggyback on you want food as medicine, we have it for you, and then they've already recognized it from a national label. So greenwashing can be a very frustrating thing, but can also be to our advantage. Thank you, Ryan, for posting that AMS market news. And then there's a question of, do any of our restaurant buyers require food safety certification? And I have never had a restaurant ask me if I was food safety certified. And I've actually mentioned it before to chefs, and they've look at me cross-eyed, and they're because they get certified in food safety, right, for handling. And so their concept of food safety is totally different than what I'm talking about. And so I don't even mention it anymore, because it's confusing them. It confuses them and makes them start to think I'm sketchy. So I think, but if a restaurant says to you that you need certification, or they've gotten some information from somebody, it's usually wrong. And so you need to educate yourself and talk to your extension agents and the Kansas Rural Center. I'm sure you guys can set people straight about what is actually required. What is the USDA saying in that rule? Because they do not say that you have to be certified in that rule. It's the companies and the pressure from the industry basically asking for that rule, and the insurance companies to be certified. Yeah.
As a follow-up for that, Katie, you said you sell to schools. Do the schools have more certification requests than restaurants?
Yeah, they don't, they don't either. They don't really know what you're talking about either a lot of times. If they're working with, like several of our schools work with third-party companies that provide the food for the school. And those companies typically are also like, they're dealing in a lot of produce distribution and they require certification. So one of the buyers that we talked to about, servicing some of their schools, because they have a lot of them, we were talking about doing lettuce, and they said, well, your farmers would have to be GAP certified or food safety certified, and this is the price point. So that's a traditional standard wholesale conversation. Like, you need the certification, and here's the price point we're talking about. Whereas like the wholesale markets we're trying to create and that I'm part of is like the farmer gets to help set the price and makes the price. Like they set prices. If it's too high, they'll bring it. The farmers themselves will bring it down because they realize they can't move it that way. But I'm tired of farmers always having to be price takers. And if we don't control any part of the logistics system, then we always will be price takers. And so we're trying to rebuild, a better logistics system, one that's accessible and builds our local food system rather than takes the power away from farmers. Yeah. I don't see any other questions in there.
Yeah, I actually think that was an excellent soundbite to end on. That was a great message. I appreciate you saying that. So,
yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. A big thank you to Katie Nixon for joining us, and also to North Central Sarah for funding this series. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.